So I would certainly like to welcome everyone this afternoon to Committee of the Whole. Obviously, with the chairperson, Brian, Trustee Morris not available. Also, Nick, I believe, also Trustee Nick Edge forwards his regrets. He's not able to make it today. Both have just personal reasons for not being able to make the meeting today. All right. So I require a mover and a seconder to approve. Sorry, yes, John, I don't need a motion to move into Committee of the Whole, do I?
No, you're just beginning the meeting.
Yes. So I'm looking for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting that was passed along to trustees earlier. Trustee Shields, seconder, Trustee Boland, thank you. All in favor? I see a lot of hands up. I'll assume that's a yes. So the motion for the agenda for Committee of the Whole is carried. Secondly, I need a motion to move into our first section, which is a closed session. So I will be looking as well for a mover and a seconder to move into closed session of Committee of the Whole. Trustee Adams moved, seconded by Trustee Gannett. All in favor? And thank you very much. All right. So John, again, I don't believe we need to motion to go back into open session. We're automatically in open session. Is that correct, sir? I believe.
That's correct, David. When you move out of close, you're in open.
Okay. So the first item on the agenda for the open session of Committee of the Whole, there is a report that was contained in the agenda package sent out to trustees last week. Always appreciate Shelley getting those packages out to us. It is a discussion on the strategic plan, and I think it focuses more on the work plan part of the strategic plan. Especially noted is the work plan for the meetings we have, the committee meetings and whatnot we have that are scheduled throughout the year, and the sort of process we follow and the work that we're expected to do as a board of trustees and as an administration. So there's no recommendations from this. It's an information item, and I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Education, Mr. Pino Buffoni, to lead us through the work plan part of the mid-year update of the strategic plan. Thanks.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to bring the Board of Trustees up to date. Again, this is part of our annual commitment, really in three parts around our work plan for staff, the introduction of that annually, the mid-year update, which is presented and before you today, and of course, at the end of year, a consolidating look back at the work plan. As Vice Chair Kaiser mentioned, there are really three key documents for us from a perspective of work plans. The strategic plan, of course, the board work plan, and then the work plan for staff. And you'll see in the attachments both the actual content of the work plan for staff and also the board work plan with the corresponding dates and times for deliverables on reports of a governance nature. Wanted to share with the Board of Trustees just a few background and opening comments. One is that we're really in the fourth year of a three-year strategic plan. In part because of the current pandemic situation, we really did extend the existing strategic plan for an additional year while we got the current renewed strategic planning process underway. So very grateful for that stable context for us. I couldn't have imagined last spring and early fall engaging in a lot of the operational details and challenges while trying to conduct the strategic plan. I think that little bit extra time, much in the spirit of the appraisal for myself, was greatly appreciated in the context of having a stable strategic plan while we settled ourselves operationally in the pandemic period. So I think we're in a good place and space there. Wanted also to share a couple of introductory comments with respect to the attachment. Of course, as always, and we'll look at this template in a new light with the renewed strategic plan. So welcome any comments or suggestions, perspectives the Board of Trustees might have on the way we set up the work plan for staff. But wanted to share, as always, that there are a series on the right-hand side of definitions, of course, not yet started or completed or are obvious in nature, but just a delineation, as always, between in progress and ongoing. Actions in progress are well underway and have a finite end within the context of the year's work plan, while actions that are ongoing refer to initiatives that take place well beyond the scope of the current year's work plan and likely well into any future strategic plan. And we know that some of the things we do have a finite end. Some of the things we do are works in progress that we're always engaged in on the journey as a learning organization. Wanted to highlight 5 or 6 key elements of this work plan and simply open it up for questions through you, Mr. Chair. First one is the ongoing provision of professional learning by our instructional coaches and consultants in both program services and special services. A huge thanks to Superintendents Poirier, Cousineau, and Block for their leadership of our central group of coaches and consultants, including those TELTCs, the technology-enabled teaching and learning coaches who do wonderful work in the district that has formed part of our district's achievement strategy in recent reports. I just want to share the learning, and I think Superintendent Cousineau mentioned this in our exec council meetings some time ago and in the report that came through on the achievement strategy, that we've adapted the nature of the interaction between the coaches and consultants and the staff in schools. These coaches and consultants have always worked elbow to elbow, so to speak, with their colleagues, sometimes in larger venues or with larger numbers. That shifted a little bit more lately to more one-on-one work, which is a form of coaching model anyway. Many individuals, including Jim Knight, a U.S. consultant, speaks to the importance of the one-on-one piece. So we've adapted the kind of work in the professional learning of the district as a result of the context we're in, and we're learning from it. So we'll take the good learning from that to combine with the real best practices and promising practices of the past to move forward with what will likely always be some hybrid model of various coaching elements. So very important work that takes place for us. In addition to that, the continued refinement of Lead with Care, Create a Responsive Environment, which is our approach to tiered mental health, particularly for students and families who may be vulnerable or at risk in the current context, as a key component of year 4 of the action plan for the district's wellbeing strategy. Again, beyond the work plan for staff, the district's achievement strategy and the district's wellbeing strategy are 2 key components of the annual plans underneath the strategic plan. So that work continues, again, with an eye to learning from the current context of the pandemic. And one of the pieces I will add here very briefly in the context of this extraordinary period is that we'll look in the Our Schools survey. You'll note in the plan itself and the attachment under the safe, caring, and inclusive and respectful environments guiding principle that we conduct a school climate survey every 2 years. We're looking this year to incorporate some questions of our very own that ties specifically to the pandemic and its impact on our students and their families. I think it's really important to do that kind of learning, again, during a period that we did not bring upon ourselves, but that we're leading and managing our way through. So that's important work that will continue. Briefly, steady progress regarding other initiatives, including childcare modernization and the plans going forward around the childcare expansion at Herman Street Public School that we're excited about. We'll bring an updated element of that report when we look at the Petawawa Family of Schools report later this spring, as well as international education and the relaunch of that for our district. We were really just early on in gaining momentum in that when the pandemic hit, but we have an eye, and I think Superintendent Block could speak to this better than I can. We've re-engaged an international student who's now come that's met all of the federal guidelines for international students, and we'll get our way back into that over time, including, and we've not lost sight of, our partnership with l'Académie Clermont-Ferrand. for students, for staff. On a governance front, that's not lost on us. It's simply been paused as we manage the pandemic, but all elements that we continue to do work behind the scenes on, in the hopes, and in my hope, that we leverage the organization to move out of the pandemic as smoothly as we can once we're through this period, whenever that might be. In addition, sound and sensible approaches to health and safety related activities and tasks as part of the district's return to school and work guidelines, in close collaboration with the Renfrew County and District Health Unit, as well as the Ministries of Education, Health, and Labor. And I'll ask during my update in the board meeting this afternoon for Superintendent McIntyre to speak to some of those elements. Huge thanks to him and to Superintendent Barnes for her work leading our facilities, as well as our finance in managing the pandemic period. So that's something that's been a key part of the work plan this year that we knew going into the fall, but has been a significant commitment of time, energy, effort on the part of both Superintendents McIntyre and Barnes. So can't thank them enough for their leadership there. Reasonable adaptations to the cyclical review of programs and/or services, if as appropriate in the context of the current school year. So one of the areas we were going to look at next, of course, is the review of our employee services. Just as part of that cyclical review, we'll extend that, much like we did the review of special services, to be over 2 years and not one, to allow us to adapt to our current context and, quite frankly, not pull Superintendent McIntyre or his team off of priority operational pieces right now. Even though we know a review is always important, we want to balance that and make sure we're leading responsibly. So we'll just extend that. And then, of course, other elements of our reviews, including our secondary school review, that will be extended a little longer than we initially had anticipated over a year and a half ago when we set out to engage a secondary school review. And thank Superintendent Poirier for her leadership in that area, but all for the sensible reasons of managing the organization while we lead for its future. Last but not least, sustained implementation of a strategic communications plan for the district, including outreach to school communities across the county with respect to the renewed strategic planning process, our program expansion at the elementary level, the upcoming secondary school review, and the launch of our refreshed website. And a huge thanks to our manager, Ladderroot and Communications, for his leadership, as well as Hannah McMillan as our communications coordinator in getting that work done for us. Very excited about everything from the renewed strategic plan to the refreshed website, all important work that carries on for us this school year. And again, the attachments, as you'll note, include the details of those pieces. Happy to answer any questions and to talk our way through really what a privilege and a pleasure it continues to be to engage the work plan, no doubt with some challenges and opportunities that the pandemic has provided. But based on the work plan itself, we feel we're on target for most items that have a finite end period for the end of this year, and then look for some of those ongoing ones to be a part of the renewed strategic plan moving forward.
Thank you for the summary of that report. I know there was a lot on the attachment that trustees received. I'm guessing that there's going to be some questions. I'm wondering if you can use the raise hand. I can't see all the trustees. I don't want to miss anybody, but does anyone have a question for our director? Trustee Humphreys.
I just have to remember to lower my hand afterwards. That'll be the trick. Thanks, Pino. That was very helpful overview for sure. And you did answer actually a couple of my questions, so that'll save a little bit of time. I'm really interested in the school climate survey, and I know I think in the documentation it suggests we're going to do that in April of 2021, which is great. And one of my questions was going to be, are we going to add some of our own questions? And it sounds like we are, specifically addressing impacts of the pandemic, which I think will be very useful. I also wonder, and maybe it's too much, there certainly is a need for us to gather more data around anti-racism issues, those kinds of things that we know are so predominant in across the province, not just here. And I know that data is one of the things that I think we need more of. We need to get that student voice particular, and I know that our Student Senate can help us with that as well. But I wondered whether or not, when we do the school climate survey, whether we wanted to add a couple of extra questions. I don't know, maybe it's too much to have both that and the pandemic and the regular questions, but I'm just concerned that I know we do need to get some data in order to move forward on a number of things. So just wondered what your thoughts are on that.
Two pieces there, and I'd like to turn it over to Superintendent Kuzno for his perspective. He's got the most in-depth handle on the Our School survey and its context for us. So I'll turn it over to Renewal shortly. A couple of comments, and I think you raised some really great points, Susan, both in terms of, we're going through a unique time, and it's a unique opportunity to catch information. So I agree. I think all of what you've mentioned is of value, not only this really extraordinary pandemic context, which we will learn from in the survey feedback, but also the emerging pieces around equity. So I will turn over to Renewal in a comment. Just one thing for the Board of Trustees to keep in mind, and I've been very cautious to sort of hold myself back on operational pieces and discussing them for the next strategic plan, because I just want to take the time to listen. It's been very beneficial. But one of the ones that's come up that I've engaged a bit of a conversation in, because it's come up unsolicited, so to speak, is a couple of positions for consideration for our organization. And one is an equity advisor, because I truly believe, and we're not alone, some districts already have them. And when I speak to Patrick Case of the Equity Secretariat, it's one of the suggestions as a promising practice that organizations can engage in on two fronts. One is there is work that the organization can do and probably recognizes itself that needs to be done. And then there's probably work that the organization doesn't recognize needs to be done, but still needs to be done. And the equity advisor position is like a third-party position that helps the organization beyond the organization helping itself. So that's one. The other position for consideration, and then I'll make a final comment and turn it over to Renewal. At least I've given him some lead time. The other one is a data position. Someone who has the expertise to analyze data, and more importantly to my mind, to help us translate what we see into effective practice. And I think that's probably on balance the greatest challenge with data. It's not that the data isn't there, it's what you actually do with it to affect change. And there too, I think the organization can only take itself so far. Sometimes you do need a special set of skills to help with that. Now, having said both of those, I understand going forward, our economic situation is likely not to be flourishing as we come out of the pandemic. We're going to have to be cautious and careful, wise around the introduction of various positions and what comes off the table if we do that. But those are two examples of some things to help move the organization forward. Bit of a long answer to your question, but I just think it's a really good points you've raised. And over to Renewal for a comment around our school survey.
Thanks, Pino. Good afternoon, everyone. Just like to add very, very briefly, I think we need to make sure that the spirit of the school climate survey it is maintained. And that what I mean is that when we get into questions of equity and anti-racism, we're getting into very specific questions. And I think we need to be thinking our way through in terms of how we ask the questions, so it's done in a way that doesn't perhaps re-traumatize students with their experience with the system. The other piece around data collection, we have it in our work plan that we will be moving forward with a staff census this year, and the intention would be to move forward with a student census into the next school year. We are mandated under the provincial guidelines to have conducted a staff and student census by 2022, I believe, or 23. and it is our intention to gather that data. So when Susan speaks of data, I think that is essential data to have to understand whether our cadre of staff is represented. It represents or is our community and the students that we serve within the organizations. So those would be the logical next steps. And there are questions more of a general nature in the Our School survey. So that deal with a student experience in schools, but we don't necessarily disaggregate into some of those groups specifically.
Susan, any follow-up? Or sorry, Trustee Humphries, any follow-up?
Maybe if just a quick one for Superintendent Kozno. I don't believe I've actually ever seen the questions on the student survey. Is it possible before it goes out to the students in the spring that the trustees get a copy of that as well, just so that we see what's being asked? And maybe others have seen it. I just have not.
I'd have to check with Amy Johnson, who's been our lead this year with the learning bar. The questions, yeah, we can look at the questions and perhaps at a future session through and we can communicate the information through Pino as to the nature of those questions. For sure, we'll follow up.
Okay, thank you. No, that's good.
Anybody else with a question in regards to the work plan or any of the comments or discussions following the presentation? Trustee Boland?
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, just going through, I just had a couple of areas I just want more information on. And the first one would be through Renewal's lead. It's the capacity building in the area of elementary numeracy. And I just wanted to know more information on, it's called the Focus on Fundamental and Mathematics, the Lawson Continuum, and Number Talks, what those involve.
So just with respect to the Lawson Continuum is a series of continuum on learning progressions. So how concepts build upon one another, and the district has done a significant amount of work at elementary over several years now, reaching back to the previous provincial math strategy. That was an important component of the work. And math talks are actually strategies that are engaged within the classroom themselves, where students have the ability to verbalize some of their understanding. So it's actually making math very interactive. The work this year has been challenging in the sense that we're implementing a new curriculum. The new provincial curriculum is a well-designed and well-presented document because it's interactive and it's dynamic. So on the web, rather than have simply a PDF version of a document, it truly is interactive with concept learning embedded in the curriculum itself, as well as long-range plans. But the challenge has been having opportunities to work with groups of teachers. That's been limited. So we're getting at it almost one-on-one with some of our numeracy coaches. We've invited people to attend some virtual sessions, sometimes after school. But it's going to be a slow process, even though people have really gone above and beyond, getting immersed in the new curriculum, in understanding the realignment, and continuing the use of strategies that they've been perfecting over the last several years.
Any follow-up, Trustee Boland?
No follow-up. Thank you very much, Ronald. I do have a couple of other questions for other leads, but I noticed Pino have put up his hand, so maybe he wants to address this as well.
Thanks, Trustee Boland. I did very quickly. Through you, Mr. Chair, just an interesting comment around the loss and continuum. In my school visits, and to be honest, I never engaged with the loss and continuum as a teacher or even as an administrator. In my school visits, up until last winter, really, and in part, there was some interruptions due to labor disruption before the pandemic. But one of the trends I was noticing when I spoke to teachers about the loss and continuum, there's a bit of and I'm not sure, Renewal, you probably have the name for it, but there's a bit of almost like a placemat. It's larger in size that you can often put up on the wall to track progress over time with concepts. And one of the comments from our teachers that came out over and over again when I asked them about their engagement with this particular tool and continuum is that it gave really sound strategies of next steps to try with students when they were stuck on a concept. And I think that really speaks volumes to the professionalism of our staff and the real desire of staff to try and help students through a particular concept or skill, especially in the area of mathematics, which is so foundation building. You build one concept on another in many of the notions over time. So I thought it was really interesting that the loss and continuum, so many teachers said, look, it gave me 2 or 3 things to try. And if I tried one, it didn't work, I had something else to go to give it a go with this student to move them through that particular concept or skill. So I just wanted to add to that. Interestingly, Trustee Boland, that you picked that one out as an example of some of the work we're doing instructionally. But that was a real benefit of that particular continuum in the context of the daily teaching and learning of our staff.
Thank you, Director. Before I get to another question for Trustee Boland, is there anyone else who has a question? Again, I can't see everybody. I would assume if you raise your hand, it will show me on the screen. I don't see anybody else. Trustee Boland, if you would like to continue with your next question.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Pino. It's nice to, when you go into the classroom, to see certain things working and that people actually like it and are involved in certain strategies. So that's good to know. I think Jacqueline had stepped out. My next question was for her, so I'll pass that and then go to Jennifer. Jennifer was the lead on this. I know we have mentioned it before, I guess just the start of it, but it's the design standards, the pilot projects in both Rockwood and Champlain. So I just want to know where we are with that, how we're doing with those design standards, if Jennifer is there.
I am here. I'm not sure if I'm on your screen. I did have my photo on. Like many things in the pandemic, the good work of that design committee has been put on hold with the many restrictions. Getting into those flexible seatings and creative learning spaces has not been an ideal opportunity during the pandemic. So we certainly have all of the groundwork and legwork set in place so that when we are able to get back to the way we were before, we'll make that a top priority.
Anybody else with any questions or comments if I can't see you and you do have something, just take yourself off mute and the floor is open for about 10 seconds and I'll move on. Okay, the only thing that I would add before we close off committee of the whole, very quick committee of the whole meeting today, would be just going back to Trustee Humphrey's question. I think it opens up some questions in my mind. I mean, school climate survey and other surveys that may go out to the public, because they're going out to the public, it seems to make sense to me that trustees would get a view of those questions before they're actually sent through. So maybe that's something other trustees are thinking about. I'm not sure. I had to think about that for a couple of minutes after the question. So perhaps that's something we can discuss one of our trustee talks or somewhere down the road, but it does seem to fit the model that something that could be going into the public and the community and the media. We would probably want to have at least an idea of what those questions are and where they are in terms of the direction of the board. So unless anyone else has a question or comment regarding that. Trustee Shields?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Anything that's going to the public, we should know about it, because we don't want to hear about it in the street or in a grocery store. So we should have some idea of what the content is and that sort of thing. Thank you.
I don't know if you can see me, Dave, but it's
Sure,
Mike.
go ahead, Mike.
Anyway, just for all the reasons that the last three trustees spoke on, I fully concur if it's going out to the public. And I just think it's a good idea that we peruse it and take a look at what's going out. So like you say, if we're stopped or questioned, we've got an idea of what they're answering to. Thank you.
Director Buffoni, please.
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Chair, I think that's a wise suggestion. Just a comment, sometimes the nature of the surveys don't allow you to send the questions in advance. You kind of have to go into them to respond. If that's the case, we'll go in, pull the key questions and send them to you in text format. If it's not something we can send like an attachment, so to speak. So we'll figure out a way to make sure you've got the content, so to speak, if it's a format that's not amenable to you just reading it right off of script, so to speak.
Thank you. And Trustee Adam, you had your hand up, or you were going to make a comment, or you had a question?
I was just going to remark that I agree with these comments, but I did notice earlier last week, when Manager Laderuth sent out an email to trustees about the new COVID restrictions, walkthrough for students before going to school and stuff. And then 20 minutes later, my phone rang and it was the RCDSB with the important message. So I appreciated getting the email before, and I think that has just been the general practice, which I'm just expressing appreciation of. I understand that it's not always possible. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other questions or hearing no other requests for a question or a comment, this concludes the Committee of the Whole. I'm looking first of all, I want to thank everyone for attending the Committee of the Whole meeting and spending the afternoon, and remind everybody to be back at 5 minutes to 4 for the regular public board meeting. So with that, I require a mover and a seconder to adjourn Committee of the Whole. Moved by Trustee Shields, seconded by Trustee Boland. All in favor? And thank you very much. Appreciate your time, and we'll see everyone back at about 3:55. Thank you. All right, I show 4:01. I would like to welcome everybody here today to the Renfrew County District School Board public meeting for February 23rd. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. And I would like to ask Trustee Marjorie Adam if she would lead us in the invocation. There's no need to stand as we are virtually meeting today. Marjorie, Trustee Adam, please.
Thank you, guys. Is that better? I'm not sure. I'm hearing an echo. Are you all hearing?
We have a slight echo, Marjorie. I mean, we didn't have it earlier today. This is kind of interesting, but I would say just go ahead if it works for you.
All right, I'll do that. May we who are assembled here have a true understanding of the duties that are placed in our hands. We seek to have the wisdom to honor our obligations for the good of the residents of Renfrew County, to the parents, teachers, electors, and especially the students. May those who teach be ever inspired by goodness, and may the wisdom and knowledge which they impart to our students ever serve as a beacon to lighten their way. As trustees and administrators, we will work together with integrity, perseverance, and respect to the fulfillment of the trust bestowed upon us.
Thank you very much, Trustee Adam. Apologies, I should have mentioned everybody I see appears to be on mute, but if there's someone who's not on mute, if you could kindly mute your microphone unless you wish to speak, that will help with some of the feedback. Again, just as we get the meeting going, a couple of regrets tonight. Obviously, I'm not the chairperson, Trustee Morris. He's unable to be with us this evening. As well, sending his regrets is Trustee Nick Edge from Arm Prior. So just moving along with the agenda, I'm looking for approval for the agenda of today's meeting. Everyone was sent a copy by Shelley last week. Everyone's had a chance to look at the agenda. I'm looking for someone to approve the meeting agenda for today. Trustee Shields, could I have a seconder, please? Trustee Boland. Thank you very much. Comments on the agenda, questions? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor? Not seeing any nayers. The motion to confirm the agenda is carried. Also at this time in the agenda, I would just like to ask if anyone has what they perceive to be a conflict of interest for anything on today's board agenda. If you do, please declare that now. Seeing, hearing none, I will move on to the approval of the minutes. All trustees would have received a copy of the minutes dated January 26th, 2021 for our last board meeting. I require a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes of the meeting. I'm looking for a mover, Trustee Boland, seconder, Trustee Gannett. Thank you very much. Any questions, errors, omissions on the minutes of the previous board meeting that anyone would like to bring to the board's attention? Seeing none, hearing none. All in favor? And those minutes are carried. Thank you very much. So as we normally say, we come to the sort of the fun part of our evening, our presentation section of our public board meeting. Today it's a presentation on the fresh perspective on measuring student growth. There is a PowerPoint, I understand, it's going to be utilized for this presentation. Trustees will get an email copy of the PowerPoint presentation following the meeting. So I don't believe you have one now, but you can follow along with the presenter, and you will be sent a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. This in our original discussions today, I think it's kind of interesting. This ties into our inspired learning. So I think we'll find this quite interesting. And without further delay, I'll ask our Superintendent Jacqueline Poirier to introduce our guest speakers and cue our presentation for today. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Great, thanks so much, Dave. As you stated, the title of the presentation is A Fresh Perspective on Measuring Student Growth, and this does come out of our learning during the time of the pandemic, but also in relation to inspired learning and our strategic plan in terms of excellence in teaching and learning. So not our most recent program committee, but the one previous when we did present on student achievement and well-being. This is an opportunity for a presentation that relates to some of that context, and it is a secondary context. And I will have a request that Jenny Smith, who's our student success lead for the board, will make a more further introduction of all of the participants that are here. And just many thanks to them, because they literally were on a call till 4 o'clock with a presenter, Penny Kittle, who's been offering some PD in the board. And tonight was the first day after school with 84 of our staff members joining into that virtual session. So thank you so much for everybody for being here, and over to you, Jenny.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Nice to see everyone. Sorry, background noise here in the office. It's my pleasure to introduce this group of dedicated educators today. So today we have with us 3 secondary instructional coaches. We have Jenna Bello, Candice Levesque, and Kim Oates, as well as fellows teacher Don Byers and Valor teacher Karen Catlin. So as you know, you've probably heard the word pivot used a lot over the past length of time, and it's become a really common word for us too, as we've continued to adapt to new learning environments and structures. And education's like this all of the time. You know, we're always thinking about what we're doing, we're reflecting, we're refining, we're trying new ideas, and that's always really exciting. But this past year, the need to shift and pivot has kept us on our toes even more. I feel I need to say that, you know, for all the examples across our district I've had the pleasure of hearing, we can be really proud of our educators and their resilience. both those who are in the schools and those who are in central roles supporting the teachers in our schools, just continuing to be rethinking and dedicated to learning. So what we've chosen to share with you today hopefully illustrates an example of such a pivot kind of an action that we've experienced over the course of this year, as well as highlighting the partnership that exists between our teachers and our instructional coaches. And as well as an example of the, just the ongoing thoughtful dedication of the teachers who, in the midst of the pandemic, are still continuing to try and think and to try and maintain a focus on creating inspired learning environments to the greatest extent that is possible. So a tribute to them. So I will turn it over to this group who will share with you a story from our learning this year.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting us to share with you a snapshot of some of the fantastic work that has been going on in secondary school classrooms. The past year has been an unprecedented challenge for students and teachers, families, administrators, and board leaders. Our secondary schools face the challenge of transitioning from a semestered system to a quadmestered system, whereby students study 2 courses at a time for a period of approximately 9 weeks. Mathematically, daily instructional time remained the same as that in a standard semester. However, the amount of consolidation time for students was reduced in half. In order to preserve a maximum number of instructional days, the RCDSB made the decision to replace a formal exam with a rich task, whereby students would consolidate and reflect on the big ideas of the course. The task was weighted as 10 to 15% of the final mark. Instructional coaches partnered with teachers at the teacher's request to create tasks that would inspire students to express their thinking in an authentic manner by connecting course content to areas outside of the classroom. Teachers were understandably tentative about the change, but also excited and intrigued by the numerous possibilities which lay before them. Both of the culminating tasks being presented today incorporate student voice and choice. Student well-being was enhanced through students being given the opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge and understanding of course material in a format that differed from regular methods.
So in our first task here is from a grade 12 biology university level course, and students chose a video of interest and made direct connections to the diverse units of study in the biology course, which includes biochemistry, metabolic processes, molecular genetics, homeostasis, and population dynamics.
For the grade 9 geography task, students created their own communities. So you can see a copy of the assignment that Candace is pulling up there. And so they had a series of questions to answer throughout their planning and as they designed their communities that had to do with the categories of landform features and climate, natural resources, population, and sustainability. And then once they designed their communities, they were tasked with then designing a website that would attract people to want to come and be members of that community.
So then further connections to inspired learning is the students were then in this biology course took the course's big ideas to make connections to, again, any video of their choosing. They chose scientific videos, there was anime videos, there was long distance running videos, any variety. So they could see connections between their learning and biology with their own personal everyday world. And to give you an idea of what one of the big ideas is in the homeostasis unit, the big idea is organisms have strict limits on the internal conditions that they can tolerate. Systems that maintain homeostasis rely on feedback mechanisms which can be affected by the environment.
For the grade 9 geography task, Karen and I examined her original culminating task, and the table that you see at the bottom of that current slide, we used that to help us design better inquiry questions that would promote deeper thinking from the students about the concepts in the geography course. When we looked at her original assignment, we noticed that it focused more on identifying and describing characteristics and concepts, and less on having students actually justify the choices that they were making and evaluating the impact that those choices might have on their community. So for example, in addition to asking questions like, where is your community located, and describe the landform, features, and climate of your community, we added questions like, why might these features appeal to people in your community, and how might these features affect the residents in those communities?
And again, looking a little further here, when considering some of the core skills with literacy and multimedia, these biology students were asked to evaluate media more for scientific accuracy and relevance, and then use a really specific scientific literacy skills. So scientific language, reading, listening, writing, speaking, experimentation, data analysis, right? Making connections and conclusions, any of these things. And then from that, they chose to present their work in a number of different ways through various multimedia. Some chose slides or video or some other sort of software that basically allowed them to really most clearly communicate their findings with their teachers and with other listeners.
When we plan our inspired learning opportunities, in addition to incorporating those big ideas, we were trying to focus on incorporating literacy skills and those global competencies. So we've listed here for the geography task 4 of those global competencies that really were prevalent in the redesigned geography task. So the task requires that students communicate while demonstrating a variety of literacy skills. So they read for research purposes to make sure that what they're putting into their communities is grounded in best practices in terms of community design. They write descriptions and justifications, and then they were presenting them in a website. So further to the reading and writing literacy skills, they also were able to develop their media literacy skills as well. In terms of the other global competencies, the concept of citizenship was addressed when students had to answer the questions, how does a diverse society benefit and challenge a community? And as an urban planner, how did you design your community to foster kind and strong community relations? So asking grade 9 students to assume the role of urban planners is obviously quite a challenge that we put up for them, but Karen's students were definitely up for that challenge and rose to the occasion. So for creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship, they're designing their own communities, and then the entrepreneurship part comes into play when they have to design that website and try to advertise to people to get them to want to become members of that community. And then, as mentioned earlier, we made those improvements to questions that push students to think more critically about the impact of their plans on the environment and on the people who would hopefully come to live in the communities that they had designed. And at this point, we're going to turn it over to Dawn and Karen and their students who are not here with us, but we will hear from a couple of them via video. So over to Dawn.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. In my experience teaching science, we have always had an exam, and in more recent years have included a culminating activity as well. I've seen great value in the culminating activities and was looking for a new way to incorporate some of the work that we had done in class into a meaningful and enriching experience. To be completely honest, I was struggling. My primary thought was to find a few case studies to have the students in my grade 12 university biology class use their knowledge gained in each of our units to come up with a solution or possible solutions to the problem that they determined. Unfortunately, most of the case studies I found were way above the knowledge that we had gained in our class, as most case studies are for university or medical students. One day, I was showing a quick video to support some of the content we had learned in class and started off with, do you see how this relates to just what we learned? But then I continued, do you see how this relates to metabolism, to cellular biology, to molecular genetics, and homeostasis? I got so excited by the idea that so many things could be linked in one video, and it hit me. This is it. This is what we're going to do for our culminating. To be 100% honest with you, the looks that I was getting in return were shock, confusion, and a little bit of panic. What do you want us to do? Was their response. Find a 20-minute video or less and explain how it relates to each of the units that we have studied. I was so excited. I started pulling up commercials, small clips from other videos that we had watched in class, and we even got into Disney movies. Before long, you could link everything together, and it was amazing. Some students struggled with where to start. What kind of video should I use? And my simple answer was to them, what are you interested in? This usually led to some ideas. The rich conversations the students had with one another and sharing the resources was absolutely amazing. I overheard several students talking about how they could find some of the units, but not every single one. The conversations they had were deep and meaningful as they worked through this together. One of my students went right after the Disney idea, and here's a part of his video.
Let's go into metabolic processes and some photosynthesis. At many points in the movie, we see a rose, and while it may be an enchanted rose and it doesn't follow the laws of the world, let's just say it was an ordinary rose. Plants have basic needs such as sunlight, food, and water. The rose is kept in a glass container with no exposure to oxygen or moisture. So already, you're not in a good spot if you're trying to keep it alive. And although it looks like a relatively clean glass container, we can almost guarantee that the beast doesn't really clean it all that often, so it's stuck in that same environment all the time, harming its integrity. Another thing is that it's kept in the west wing, which is a very dark and cold room at the edge of the castle. So other than the fact that the rose would die due to, the beast not finding its true love, it would die anyways because of an unhealthy environment and lack of sunlight, water, food. Since ATP is needed for any muscle contraction, we need ATP to perform simple tasks. When Belle is held captive, she is more than likely underfed, which means she is not producing a whole lot of ATP. And she might feel a little fatigued due to this. So cue in Lumiere and Cogsworth and their brand of dinner and show, which probably boosts her ATP levels, which gets her feeling back to normal.
So I'm reminded by my past students on a regular basis how impactful this culminating activity was. They often comment on how fake many videos and shows are now that they know how to critically think about the content. I would again like to thank you for this opportunity to share my experience with you. It was definitely a rewarding experience as I got to sit and speak to each of my students and see what they had learned in my class. And as a bonus, I have new videos to show next time and have helped a group of young minds critically think about life.
Hi. I appreciate the opportunity to share the positive impact the changes to my geography culminating have had on both my students and on me as a teacher. So the picture that you guys see right now is actually the picture of a community that was designed by a student. So as Janet previously mentioned, the project is essentially two parts. So the community they designed in our final unit of study on livable communities, which is what you're seeing in front of you, and the website, which is our culminating task. So the community design itself has always been popular, and students know right from the beginning of that last unit that they will be designing their own community. In fact, sometimes I let it slip a little bit earlier in the course because they're super excited about it. So it really is the student choice and creativity that has always led to some really great projects. And I noticed the excitement throughout the course as well. So for the culminating, I've always liked the idea of building on what we've just completed, especially since it's always well loved. But I knew there was a way to update the medium we used. We used to create a brochure, and that's fine, but you know, I wanted to change it up a little bit, be a bit more modern, and I also wanted to get the students to demonstrate a deeper understanding of the big ideas. So I've always worked well with Janet in the past, so I reached out to her to bounce ideas off each other to come up with the best updated project for the students. So this past quad was the first time doing the website, and I was amazed at how well it went over. The students were engaged right away, and let's be honest, probably knew the format better than I did. So Candace is just bringing up the single point rubric that the students were given. So Jenna and I did our best to create it as simple as possible to align with the big ideas of the course. And then we also created a table based off of this for the students to fill out. So you can see very clearly the 4 different units of the course. And then they had questions that Jana talked about with the what versus kind of the deeper understanding that they built in. So we went over the criteria in class. Like I said, it aligned with the units really nicely, so they could kind of see how that went together. And then they were tasked before handing it in to use this to also self-assess themselves. So having the clear criteria allowed them to make improvements as necessary before submitting for assessment, which was nice. It's always nice to have that. And then I think you're going to see one of my students' websites as I kind of talk about a little bit of the rest of the project. So this is Sophie. She included her map as well, and she did a fantastic job. I feel that having this kind of creative license for this both projects and the ownership over the project allowed them to create their best work as they're engaged and inspired. And the creation of their website further increased their engagement as it is a relevant and transferable skill. In addition, they're also aware of the challenges that communities are facing today and the need to address these current real world issues in their project. We talk a lot about sustainability throughout the entire course. They wanted to start almost before the instructions were complete. And once they began, you could hear a pin drop in the classroom. They were off and running on the website. The addition of the analysis questions, so instead of just what are the landform regions, again, looking a little bit deeper and connecting it to them in the chart, allowed the students to not only demonstrate a surface knowledge of facts and vocabulary from the course material, but also allow them to engage in and showcase a much deeper understanding of the big ideas of the course through justifying their choices and also speculating the possible impacts of their choices on their communities. So in geography, we always look at the what, but then the why. Now, for me as a teacher, because the students were asked to think more critically about the course material, like in the additions that we made, I was able to assess their true understanding of the big ideas in the course with much better accuracy. So now you're going to hear from Sophie. So that's whose website you just saw. And she was asked what she liked about having to create her own community and website, and then how this project helped her to demonstrate her understanding of the big ideas in the geography course.
I really like this project we did in geography. It was where we made a website and designed a city or a community on everything we learned in the quad. I really like that we had lots of freedom to be as creative as we wanted at the same time as making our own website. It tied in everything that we learned, and like it showed us how we can have sustainable housing to prevent urban sprawl, and that we need lots of green space for mental health and socializing, and like even just for animals' life and habitats, and that it protects. If you put it between buildings and water, it will help prevent erosion. It also showed me the importance of having local food developments and how urban planners can prepare for a more sustainable future.
So thank you again for granting us the opportunity to share some of the great work being done by our students and teachers in our secondary classrooms. And we look forward to answering any questions that you might have at this time.
Well, thank you for the presentation. I'm going to look for hands, or either raised hands on the virtual part, or just, I don't see any trustees on my screen right now. So maybe I'll just ask that if you have a question, if you unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the question. And if there's two people at the same time, I'll choose one or the other. Questions, trustees?
It's Mike Gannett here. Just more of a comment. I appreciate the work that the due diligence everybody's put in with their students. I can see the smile on some of the staff members' faces that they really enjoyed doing this presentation and connecting with their students. So it's nice to see a fellow staff member there as Don Byers waving at me. So thank you everyone for doing a fine presentation. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Gannett. Maybe to try to get some conversation going, I have a question. The current situation we're in with the pandemic and whatnot, is this a type of learning or a type of teaching that you would normally have thought about doing, or is this something that came about because of trying to find different methods of teaching and different ways of having students learn? I'm just more curious than anything. I'm not sure who that should be addressed to. Maybe Jenny, if you could direct it to who you think would be best to answer my question. Sorry about that.
But that's okay. If Don or Karen wanted to respond to that, that would be great.
So for me, I've done the design of community in past years. Currently, I'm teaching in class, so that part didn't really change because of the pandemic. The website was updated because it was just time. Now I am actually, it's an interesting question. I am going to be teaching geography online for the last quad. So I'm really kind of interested to see how that's going to go and what are some changes that I might make, and how the change in assessment versus the change in everything, but what the communication will be between sort of me and the students in a project like that. I think the website would transfer very, very well to online, and yeah, that's a big thing to think about, how this will transfer.
And Dawn, I think you had mentioned that in the past you had done an exam and a culminating, so that would be the difference for you this time around, right?
Yeah, we have typically done both in the science department. And in the last few years, it's been a pretty structured culminating, and I didn't feel like it was reaching its full potential, is maybe the best way to say that. So allowing the students to drive the culminating was the most amazing thing. And it's hard as a teacher to sit back and go, okay, go. Hopefully it works. So it was really stepping out of my boundaries that I'm comfortable in, but in the end, it was so rewarding. It was so nice to see them grow and just giving them the opportunity to choose what they wanted to watch. And, you know, I said the 20-minute video to start, and they were like, well, what if it's this? And can I take clips out? And we just adapted as we went, and it was phenomenal. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Okay. Thank you. The raising of the hand does seem to work. Trustee Boland, I saw your hand come up. If you would have a question or a comment.
Sure, thank you very much. Yeah, it just reminded me of the days when I went and did geography, where you just sat in the class and you just listened to the teacher and just, you know, memorize where all the countries were and, you know, what they were known for and the capitals. But, you know, would have been interesting, you know, to be a teenager now into your biology class or geography class, just the amount of engagement and learning. As Dawn had said, you know, they're learning on their own. They're learning what they want to learn, which is makes it even better. You know, even some of the English classes that I just happened to, you know, to attend, you know, they're reading books that they want to read, as compared to like when I went to school, I had to read a certain book, and if I wasn't engaged with it, then it wasn't as enlightening. But this, you know, it seems like the students with the two presentations, it was amazing presentations. So I can only imagine, you know, what you guys had to watch and observe with all your students and the whole class. So it just must have been like very amazing. So thanks again.
Thank you, Trustee Boland. Anybody else have a question or comment?
I think Trustee Adam had one as well, and I do too, but I'll have Trustee Adam go first.
Thank you. Yeah, I was really fascinated by both of those assignments, the senior biology and the grade 9 geography. And in the senior biology, it was amazing to contrast the quite young Disney movie with the sophisticated notions that are taught in the senior biology course. And I thought that was brilliant, showing that all levels of understanding are very good. But I was curious about the geography one, because I've taught that course in the past. And I was assuming that that presentation that we saw was from an academic level student. Yeah, so I'm wondering if you had ideas, or if you've tried using that technique, the particular website one with an applied class, and how it went down, and what perhaps adaptations you made and why, and that sort of thing.
Actually, that's a great question. So I've taught both the academic and applied before, but because we just did the website for the first time this year, I'm doing the academic, but actually it was a good friend of mine who was doing the applied, and she did the website as well. And she said it went over really well. The difference would have been in the vocabulary. So some of the, like the what questions would have been the same, but then the secondary, like deeper level thinking questions wouldn't have been quite as deep. We still would have asked like why there, but some of the connections would have been just a tiny bit different. So that's sort of the biggest difference, but I think still allowing them the choice to do it would engage them. And as soon as, especially with the applied kids, as soon as they're engaged and they have that hook, they're often running a little bit more. And then obviously how we present the material running up to that as well. Does that
follow up, Trustee Adam?
Thank you. Yeah, well, I was wondering, I mean, we know the province is looking at de-streaming grade 9, and it's going to start with the math, but I could see it extending. And I was thinking that that's really a marvelous assignment for both what we consider now academic and applied students, to enable them to work at whatever level or whatever depth of understanding they have. And so it's something that you can give to a whole class like that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Trustee Humphreys, and once you've been asking your question, just if you could kindly take your hand down so I keep track of who actually would like to have a question. Anyway, Trustee Humphreys, if you would kindly.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kaiser. Excellent presentations. It was exciting to see and hear the involvement and connections the students made, and to see the excitement on your faces as well, because obviously you were thrilled with how things went, and I think all of you said you were a little bit nervous at the beginning or weren't really sure what the heck you were doing, but you know what, it worked beautifully, obviously, and maybe it's one of those things that because of this crazy pandemic year, it has forced us to look at things a little bit differently. I just wanted to clarify one thing. Did I understand correctly that the culminating activity really took place instead of a traditional examination? Is that correct? Okay, so I see lots of heads nodding. So would you suggest that the amount of time a student spent on the culminating experience or activity was more than they might on an exam? Or it sounds like they're certainly more engaged anyway, but I guess I'm just wondering from a timing perspective. And one of the reasons I'm asking that is because I have heard from some students that the quadmester has been a bit challenging just because of the amount of time, and that sometimes there's almost too much coming at them in order to manage that time. So I just wanted to get a sense of that.
I'll break down how I did the geography culminating. And yeah, in past years, there's been an exam as well. But they had a week, or well, maybe just shy of a week. So they're 4 units. And for the double period, they kind of had a period, or sorry, a day per like unit and a half. So I think they all felt that they had enough time, but I agree that a lot of them are feeling very pressured this year. So I wanted to make sure that they had the time for the culminating to feel like that they did a good job. And I helped to break it down based on those number of days, and then giving them that sort of day to just, read it over before they handed it in. So they definitely had the time for that culminating. How it would compare to other years with the exam, I think they enjoyed the fact that they just have the one culminating.
One of the things that I've heard too, Susan, just around that is just, oftentimes at the end of a course, you'd spend a number of days on review and preparing for exams. So I've heard people talk about how rather than those days necessarily being for review for the exam, when you're actually working through the process of the culminating and the deep thinking and all those connections that go along with that, they are going through all of that course material again, but not for the purpose of preparing for the exam, but for the purpose of completing the culminating task, which for some kids just helps make the connections a little deeper for them. It depends on the approach. Sometimes the culminating can take place and go, be built on throughout the course. Sometimes it happens closer to the end. Sometimes it's little pieces of reflection that happen at the end of different units as an ongoing kind of building up to a final. So it really depends on a little bit on the approach, but I think that it's time well spent, and people who have found it in place of the exam have noted that.
Great. Thanks very much for that clarification. I appreciate that.
That's your follow. Okay, and Jaslyn, I see you have your hand up as well. Oh, we may have lost Jaslyn's internet connection. I also saw Trustee Shields with his hand up, and I'll get back to Jaslyn in just a moment. Trustee Shields?
Yeah, during these very different times, you have to come up with very inventive ways of teaching. Do you get any direction from the government on this, or do you have to come up with this yourself?
They don't give any sort of direction on what these culminating tasks might look like. I know you have your overall expectations and a sense of the big ideas of the course, and you try to figure out what makes the most sense to plan. I think that's the best way to summarize that. Would anyone disagree with that?
No, but maybe if I could just add in, I think that does allow for that professionalism and autonomy of a classroom teacher too, in terms of the context of the students they have, and the way that they're approaching those big ideas through this inspired learning lens. So it's the curriculum that we get and the assessment strategies that we're provided with, Dave, they do share those overall expectations, those big ideas. And then as the professional, as a teacher, you take into account what's happening in the classroom, who your students are, what you've been working on, the interests of students, and you're able to then formulate opportunities to have an idea and get more information and evidence about their understanding through a process that works best in the context you're in.
Any follow-up, Trustee Shields? I know Trustee Shields and I have been through many board meetings where we've talked about how do we allow teachers to be more creative in their teaching and still follow the curriculum. So it was a great question. Trustee Abbott, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Trustee Kaiser. I was having some technical difficulty with my mic, but reloaded the page, so we're back. I just had a question in reference to talking about the review of the courses. I know in some of my courses, we did do a more traditional review of the course before taking the culminating. And I was just wondering, in your classes, did you do a more formal review, or did you let the students kind of do their own self-review of the course before taking their culminating?
I can jump in, and I didn't do a formal review with them. I let them drive the whole train. And in terms of timing, I knew that they were actually going to go home and watch videos on their own time anyway. So this was actually even better, because now they were like, well, this one works. No, this one doesn't work. This one doesn't work. This one doesn't work. Hey, this one works. So it was pretty beneficial for them to drive their own train in this one.
Any follow-up, Trustee Abbott? No. Okay, well, thank you very much. I had one comment, and I'm certainly not a teacher, but one of the things that stood out in the presentation to me was the rubric that you put up with the check marks and the two columns. I kind of like that. As someone who hears from parents about rubrics and the confusing aspect that they present to really know what's going on with their child or their student, I really enjoyed that. I like seeing that, and I hope that works very effectively. And who knows, maybe that's something we can look at further down the road. Okay. I don't see anybody else. I know as acting chair, you have a few privileges, and the one, I'm sticking my neck out a little bit, but Kim Oates, are you by chance related to Wayne? Would Wayne Oates be a relation from our prior?
Wayne was my husband's father's first cousin.
Okay. Well, not as direct a relation as I thought. I mean, I'm an alumnus at Fellows, and I mean, the name Wayne Oates, synonymous with his teaching career and profession and his coaching career as well. And just a note, if you want to pass it along, even the group I grew up in, we still get together quite often, not as much in the last year, mind you, but we still talk about the heydays at Fellows, the Arm Prior Fellows rivalries, and Wayne Oates as being a well-respected coach on the other side, of course, but I thought I'd pass that along.
At the next family reunion, I'll do that.
Thank you. So I will wrap this up. I would like to thank, first of all, Superintendent Poirier for bringing this to our board. It was an outstanding presentation. I hope I get everyone right. I mean, obviously, Jenny introducing everyone. Thank you. The work you do certainly doesn't go unnoticed. And Candace, Kim, Jana, Karen, and Dawn. We love to see what our teachers are doing in the classroom and the creativity and the success they have with our students. So really appreciate time and the energy and the effort put into this presentation. Greatly appreciated by the board, and thank you very much.
Thanks for having us. Take care, everyone.
Okay, everyone, we'll kind of get back to the general, unless there's a question or a comment before we move on from anybody? No? Okay. So I will, and I know that John and I talked about the informality or formality of this, but at this point in time, we're going to move along to the committee reports to the board and that part of our agenda that we're at. And the first one is, of course, the committee of the whole report. So I will officially step down as chair to present the committee of the whole reports, which I will bring up. So the committee of the whole met twice today in terms of closed session and open session. The closed session report is as follows. The committee of the whole of the Brantford County District School Board met on February 23rd, 2021 and discussed the following items again in closed session. Finance and Resources Committee meeting closed session report, dated February 9th. That was a follow-up. And the Director of Education's performance appraisal, which was a review of the work that the Policy Review Committee is doing toward working toward an informal and a formal process there. There were no recommendations made. This was an information report only closed session, and I move that the board receives this report. I would be looking for a seconder. Seconder by Trustee Adam. Any questions or comments about the closed session report today? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor of receiving the report? That report is received. Thank you very much. The next committee of the whole report was the open session, February 23rd, 21. So the committee of the whole of the Renfrew County District School Board met on February 23rd, 2021 and discussed the following item again in open session. The Renfrew County District School Board 2017 to 20 strategic plan, kind of a mid-year update, just looking at the work plan that the board puts in place through the administration for the year. Again, it was an excellent report. All trustees received in their package a detailed version of the report and the summary that was given by the director and I believe 3 of the administrators. So we appreciate that. There were no recommendations made. Again, it was an information session. So I move that the board receives this report. I make a motion to receive the report. Looking for a seconder for that as well. Trustee Boland, any comments from any trustees in regards to the committee of the whole open session report today? Seeing none, all in favor of receiving that report? Seeing lots of hands. I believe I got a seconder. Yes, I did. That report is received. And thank you very much. I will move back into the role of chair to complete the rest of the meeting. Hope I did that right, Jonathan. The next item on our report agenda is the Program and Student Achievement Committee report open session. I will ask the chair of our Program and Student Achievement Committee, Trustee Mike Gannett from Pembroke, if he will present the Program and Student Achievement report for February 9th. Thank you.
Thank you, Advisor. Just the Program and Personnel Services Committee met on Tuesday, February 9th, 2021, to discuss the following item, the school year calendar report. Superintendent Cousineau gave an overview of that report. There is one item on the agenda that was brought to the committee, and that the committee accept this report. But prior to that, if there's anybody that has any questions for either myself or preferably Superintendent Cousineau, please feel free to raise your hand.
Trustee Gannett, was there a motion brought forward in the
Yes, there was. There was one motion for the school year calendar report that the Renfrew County District School Board submit the proposed school year calendar for 2021-22 for its approval by the Ministry of Education. I'd like to have a mover on that report.
So Trustee Gannett has moved the adoption of the report, including the motion. I'm looking for a seconder for that. Trustee Humphreys, thank you very much. Any discussion on the school year calendar and the committee report? Trustee Shields.
Yeah, the calendar was submitted to be submitted to the government, but since they changed the March break, how does that affect how this will be approved?
Who would we direct that to? Director Buffoni, or who would Trustee or Administrator Cousineau?
Yes, thanks through you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask Superintendent Cousineau, who leads that portfolio for us, to address the question.
Thank you, Director. So this actually doesn't impact our submission of next year's school year calendar. In a regular school year, a modified school year calendar is to be submitted by March the 1st, and a regular school year calendar by May the 1st. The ministry has actually extended those timelines for next year, so we're well within the timelines to submit our calendar for approval.
Thank you, Superintendent Cousineau. Any other questions in regard to the report? If not, all in favor to adopt the report? Seeing lots of hands, that motion is adopted and that report is adopted. Our next committee report is the Equity and Inclusion Committee Open Session Report. The chair of that committee, Trustee Marjorie Adam, if you would kindly present the Equity and Inclusion Committee report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Equity and Inclusion Committee met on Tuesday, February 9th, 2021 to discuss only one item, but was an important one. It was an update for the current school year of the district mental health and well-being strategy. And that's obviously an issue which in the whole province has become increasingly important as the COVID restrictions drag on. However, no recommendations were made, and so I would like to move that the board receive this report.
We have a motion from Trustee Adam, the chair of that committee, to receive the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Trustee Shields, thank you very much. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor? Seeing lots of hands, and the motion to receive that report was carried. Thank you very much. Moving along in our trustee reports, the Finance and Resources Committee, the trustee chair for that committee is Trustee Leah Boland from Pembroke. I would ask that you present the Finance and Resources Committee report for February 9th, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Finance and Resources Committee met on Tuesday, February 9th, 2021 to discuss the following items. Number one, the Health and Safety Report. Shane Halliday gave a detailed report of the health and safety programs over the past year, especially those dealing with COVID-19. Job very well done in these trying times. Number two, finance update on the federal funding. Superintendent Jen Barnes gave a brief report on the federal funding related to COVID. No recommendations were made. I move the adoption of this report.
You're on mute, David.
I knew I would do that once during the meeting, forget. I just was going to ask Trustee Boland if there was actually any motions in this particular report. If not, I would ask him to move the receipt of this report, please.
No, there was no recommendations, but I moved the adoption of this report.
So we require a seconder to receive the report, and that would be Trustee Gannett. Thank you very much. Any discussion? Any questions? Maybe one in that, just that because I was on the minister's call the other day with the chairperson, Trustee Morris, not being able to make it, that, and maybe I could get Superintendent Barnes to comment. There was some discussion, several questions from chairs of other boards in regards to the timeframe of the GSNs and how that might affect funding for and planning for the board for next year. So I don't want to put Superintendent Barnes on the spot, but could she comment on what she's hearing at her level in terms of when the GSNs are going to come out and whether they're going to be able to be, what challenge that presents for our administration to put the plans in place for the next school year, September 2022.
No, I'm happy to respond. The ministry is striving to get the GSN release out on track, which would be end of March, as they've done in previous years, not last year because we were in the middle of just the beginning of all of this. So we have been instructed to budget and plan for a regular year, much as we did last year, and then deal with the one-offs that we are experiencing as they come up. So they did recognize that the ministry that is recognized that the late release really put some pressures on all systems, and so the effort will be to have that release end of March, and we should be back to a regular schedule. That's the plan.
Sounds like good news. Well, thank you very much. All in favor to receive the report? Seeing lots of hands, that report is carried. Thank you very much. Our last committee report is our SEAC committee report. Trustee Mike Annette from Laurentian Valley is the chairperson of that, not a chairperson of that committee, but he's an upstanding member of the SEAC committee, and I'll ask him to present the SEAC committee report for February 17th, please.
Mike, you're on mute.
I do it once every meeting. The Special Education Advisory Committee met on February 17th to discuss the following. Consultation by the Director of Education, Pino Buffoni, in support of the strategic plan. And I know that our director will be speaking shortly regarding that plan, but we had very, very good discussions, both from staff members, some community members. He will speak more to that in his report, but I was quite impressed by the caliber of questions that our community stakeholders and parents asked. My one comment is that before the meeting's adjourned, is that possibly Jonathan Latteroute or Director Buffoni put a plug in for giving feedback. It can be done electronically. I think that they're more adept to, especially Jonathan, to say how that can be done. I just want to put a plug in for our community members to do that. Secondly, there was a staff updates regarding with Bill Smith, Principal of Special Services. As usual, Bill had a variety of his staff discuss how they're continuing to connect with their students and staff in these challenging times of COVID. Ongoing, very creative in the ways that they're dealing with connecting with students and staff. Report from the board. Brian Morris actually gave that one, and I was expecting him to be here, but basically Brian reviewed briefly about connecting with the Minister of Education once a week, where trustees have the opportunity to send in questions. On occasion, our board has had the privilege of sending a question or two. And fourthly, the association reports. The associations that spoke, both are having challenges filling some full-time positions, as well as staff occasionally being off due to COVID. And until they get their COVID tests returned, similar to our board, that continues to be challenging. There was no specific recommendations made for the SEAC committee, and I just approve the improve the adoption of the minutes of this report. If there's anyone.
Yep. Thank you, Trustee Gannett. So Trustee Gannett has moved the receipt of the report. There are no motions in that report. I need a seconder to receive the report. Trustee Boland, thank you very much, Trustee Boland. Any discussion or questions for Trustee Gannett regarding the SEAC report? Or anything going on at SEAC? All right, seeing and hearing none. All in favor? And I see lots of hands going up. Thank you very much. And that motion to receive the report is carried. Moving along on our agenda, thanking you all for your patience tonight. The director's update is next item on the agenda. Trustees have received the director's monthly update in their trustee packages. There's two additional areas that the director is going to talk about or address. The first one is the March break that Trustee Shields brought up earlier with his question. And secondly, something that trustees have seen recently over the last couple of days is he's going to address some of the new health protocols. He's going to update that and some of the challenges it creates for the Renfrew County District School Board. Director Buffoni, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Good evening once again to the Board of Trustees. Tremendous care and commitment of our talented staff and the dedication and diligence of our engaged students has really continued to carry the day for our organization in our schools and our school communities. Over the past month, as a region permitted to allow for teaching and learning on site in schools, our students and staff have shown creativity and resilience in meeting their educational objectives during this current third quadmester, whether through in-person learning at school or remote synchronous learning at home at the secondary level, and of course the continuation of our classes as established in the fall at the elementary level. Examples of dynamic, vibrant teaching and learning environments include, and a lot of these are pulled from the virtual learning environments, of course, that are we're witnessing through social media, for instance. And of course, we had a great presentation this afternoon of precisely that engagement at the secondary level. First one I wanted to share, which I thought was a wonderful example of the kind of ingenuity that's taking place, is the molecular makeup of snow, including how hydrogen and oxygen combine in creating snowflakes. And this was just before some extracurricular activities to test the snow, so to speak, at Whitney Public School on the 16th of February. And also the beautiful creation of an artistic mural in celebration of Black History Month at Valor JK-12 School, displayed proudly on the 12th of February. Once again, our sincerest thanks to all of the focused efforts of our students and their supportive parents and guardians, as well as our thoughtful staff for their continued collaboration over this past month. We greatly appreciate all that they do in schools and central departments to ensure that our organization functions smoothly. As Vice Chair Kaiser mentioned, there are a few updates I'd like to share. This next one ties to the point around March break, and then I'm going to ask Superintendent McIntyre to speak a little bit about our revised screening protocols in collaboration with the local health unit, and Manager Latteroute just to touch on Trustee Gannett's request to just put a plug in or a shout out around the opportunities to contribute to our renewed strategic planning processes through the thought exchange. So just queuing up for both Brent and Jonathan at the end of this next comment. The fourth quarterly transition point will take place in the spring of 2020, of course. That point at both the elementary and secondary levels really begins in mid-April. As the Ministry of Education has announced a shift in the March break to April 12th to the 16th inclusive, the next transition point essentially begins after that delayed March break period to be an April break that following week, really effective at the secondary level in particular on Wednesday, April 21st. Additional communications on this item will be shared publicly in the coming weeks, including a reminder, as a friendly reminder to our parents and guardians regarding the decision-making deadline for parents and guardians of Monday, March 29th. So that date, that end of March date of the Monday of that last week in March remains the date for our parents and guardians to indicate any desired switch from in-person learning at school to online learning at home or vice versa, but that the start of that fourth quadmester will be, of course, that week after the new March break, the April break for us. So without any further delay, I'll turn it over to Superintendent McIntyre. He is our lead with respect to the work with the RCDHU, and he can provide the best detail for us around the new screening protocols for our district and the county.
Thanks, Pino. So I guess the simplest way to kind of characterize the changes are just to think back to the fall. So in September, essentially, we've returned there with very similar parameters. The one that's getting the most attention, of course, is the single symptom and the isolation of the entire household. So, that's the message was, clear from public health and from the Ministry of Health that there's a lot of worry about the new variants, and the health officials have felt that a return to that kind of a little bit more strict measure would be important. So we've, reverted back to that effective just this past Friday, and we're, working through it with our families and with our school staff. Of course, that's come with a lot of questions and a lot of wonders, and credit to the frontline school office staff and the principals and vice principals who manage a lot of questions from the public about what to do in relation to the new screening tools. So they've been quite active on the phones and working with parents to help them understand. And as always, our partners at RCDHU have been very supportive and working through this change alongside school boards. The other part that's a bit unique is dealing with high-risk contacts who reside in households who they themselves may not be at risk, but are residing in the same household. And the other unique one we have, of course, is, and for folks who, this won't be new for folks who've worked alongside the military community, but you know, a number of military folks who are on leave and then returning home and quarantining, and then their families, you know, trying to sort through what their role is in terms of isolating or not isolating and returning to work. So there are a few kind of subtle details that we're working through, but you know, for all intents and purposes, children continue to attend classes and to learn, and the organization continues to march on as we do our part for community health, and of course attend to the core business of education for the students. So glad to answer some questions if there are any, but just in terms of clarification, if you think back to the fall, that's kind of what we're back into.
Thanks, Brent, and I'll turn it over to John quickly for a bit of a shout out around the thought exchange, and then, as mentioned, open it up to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Pino. As you all know, we have an opportunity that's out there with respect to soliciting input on the STRAT plan that's in status. We've talked a little bit this afternoon around the groupings, largely internal that we've spoken to, employee and committee groups. We have had some parent voice through our PIC and our family of school consultations, which we just recently wrapped up. So in terms of the availability of folks who work alongside us, with us, and have relationships with our school communities, there is the opportunity to participate and provide input on that, and that's through the thought exchange, which we spoke earlier about and previously. To access that right now, you're able to visit our website. There's a banner image and the portal click for that. As well, it's available on our social media. We have done some radio ads as well in the lead up to those family of school consultations. So we've done some purchase media buys promoting that opportunity. We will speak more broadly about that come Monday, March 1st, as we have one consultation left remaining, and that's with our Federation partners. So we want to allow for that process to have its time and space. And once we complete that this week, we'll be able to go more broadly again to communicate that to everyone in the county, should they have an interest in providing input on that. It's very easy to use. It's the benefit of the thought exchange is you can use it where you are at your own time and place. So and multiple times as well. So encourage folks to visit our website primarily for that opportunity. And just as an update to the trustees now, understanding that we still have till March 10th, so there is some time left to participate. But in terms of a status on it, we have over 7,700 ratings on the thoughts that have been generated, 300 thoughts, and approaching in short order 400 participants. So I think a healthy mark right now, and certainly something that's been trending upwards since we initiated this, and something I think that will continue to grow as we remind folks about what we're trying to do. Also, another benefit to this in terms of leveraging awareness is our upcoming community municipal partners. So we have something scheduled to go with the Renfrew County Council. And then, of course, we're trying to coordinate a date to visit and speak and share with our friends at the City of Pembroke. So more to come, but certainly something that's so far generated I think some pretty good input, and hopefully more to come. Thank you.
Thanks, John, and thanks to Brent. And back to you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to open up to the floor for questions, comments. Susan Humphrey, Trustee Humphrey, sorry, I see your hand up.
That's okay, not a problem. Thank you. I just had one quick question, probably for either Director Buffoni or Superintendent McIntyre. Just wondering about plans for asymptomatic testing in our board. I know that's something that is coming across the province, and I think there is a requirement for a certain percentage of our class. I'm not sure what the percentage is, so I better not say, but I know there's some direction that we've been given, so I'm just wondering what our plan is.
Certainly, Trustee Humphreys, over to Superintendent McIntyre. Again, he's best positioned to respond for on our behalf.
So we are in the midst of kind of a planning phase of asymptomatic testing in schools. We have to account for 5% of our overall schools on a weekly basis, so about one school per week for us. And the target is to have about 2% of the student population tested. The testing is, of course, voluntary for both staff and students. And the 2% target is, one that we understand to be difficult to reach, even though it sounds small from some other areas that have undertaken this endeavor. Nevertheless, we're in conversation with the local health unit, the COVID-19 regional table, and our coterminous board to figure out a plan and a way forward to have asymptomatic testing available to our schools or communities if we use a hub model. So I expect it's unfortunate this meeting wasn't taking place next week, because we'd probably have this all ironed out and able to share it clearly, but we're still in the planning phase. At the moment, we're trying to secure a vendor with the help of the Ministry of Ed. That is an agent that will do the testing for us and really lead the initiative itself. And we'll act as support, of course, opening both up, opening our buildings and utilizing our staff accordingly to support the initiative. In the spirit of good community health partnership. So I would expect that some more details will emerge following a meeting tomorrow, and then into next week with some implementation happening as soon as the week thereafter. So best I can say is stay tuned to the social media channels, and we'll be communicating that out for school communities and for staff and for students.
Follow up.
Just a quick thank you for that, and I appreciate it. It takes time and planning to get this underway. It's a new venture for us. I just would appreciate getting the information though. Once you do have a plan in place, I think it's helpful for us as trustees to know how it's going to be handled, because I know that will be a question we're going to be getting from community and from parents. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Brent.
Yeah, no problem. We'll do our best to get it out to folks when we have more clarity around it. I do think it's going to come together quite nicely, and will be, available for folks who are interested in taking advantage of it. So we'll let you know for sure, either through my office or through John.
Any other questions from trustees?
Yes, it's Mike. I have one. Due to the government and the health units now having a single symptom having to regarding work with single symptoms because of the new variant. I'm just wondering, this might go to Brent, is have we had very much interest in potential young new teachers coming in to be able to fill a possible void if we get a spike in staff being off? I'm just wondering, I don't know that if you've had how much interest you've had locally or to be able to fill that.
Yeah. That's a good question. We're adding staff on a daily basis. Our job ads have been open, since beyond even before the COVID period. But and we have through the Ministry of Ed some arrangements that have been made on our behalf to have second-year faculty of ed students working at schools. So we're working through that process with a few local budding teachers, I guess we'll call them. So, the staffing issue is obviously exacerbated by the single symptom. There's no way around it. It puts more people at home. But it also, based on the evidence, seems to suggest that it keeps the community safer. So we're endeavoring to support both of those angles as best we can. And again, I'll credit the good work of the office, the administrators, that is the secretarial staff, and the principals and vice principals for managing attendance, making certain classes have staff that are equipped and able, and supporting learning. In spite of the many challenges that are presented through the screener or through COVID itself. So, we continue to do our best to serve the communities and the kids. And people are stepping up, to your question, Mike, to help us out. And we added 3 or 4 new teachers just today to the roster to hopefully be working in classrooms as soon as possible.
Thanks, Brent.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Trustee Boland.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I just wanted to comment, I had the ability to sit in on a number of community consultations. I just want to say that they've been very, very informative and engaging. It's been nice to have the input of the parents and guardians, and I look forward to the tabulated results and to be able to use those for us when we sit down to do our strategic plan. I do have a question for Brent or for somebody. So I know at some buildings, what they've done, rather than go and do asymptomatic testing, is that they've been testing the wastewater. So it's been very accurate in predicting if there's any COVID within the building. So have you thought of or allowed to do something like that?
Nothing of that nature has been presented or directed, Leo. If it does, we'll look into it and do our best to make good sense of it and use of it if it's something we're asked to do, which is generally what I find we're doing most often, doing our best to cooperate and collaborate with folks who are in community health or local health, and in both the Ministry of Ed and Ministry of Health. So I haven't heard that yet, but if it presents, we'll look into it.
Trustee Shields.
Yeah, are we using public health nurses at all in all of this?
We don't employ them, but the health unit was funded for some additional public health nurses that are doing some work in the school. Primarily, my understanding is around coordinating contact tracing and events that actually are related to a positive case. But the health unit is certainly directing those folks. We don't employ any health nurses ourselves.
Any other questions, comments? Just maybe a quick one to Superintendent McIntyre. I mean, do you foresee us getting any pressure, like families just not sending their kids to school, maybe for fear of the fact that with this new protocol, I mean, they had the same issue in September when they originally put this protocol in place, but parents who may be worried about losing their jobs if they have to actually stay home because of a single symptom case. Do you have any, I mean, obviously I'm sure it's been talked about at your level. I'm just wondering if you're fearful of parents just saying, I'm not going to risk losing my job for sending my kids to school. Could be nothing. I'm just curious more than anything.
No, I think that's a valid point for us to discuss here, but also a stark reality of folks who are endeavoring to make ends meet and relying on employment that may not be replaced by paid sick leave. So it's the stark reality of the COVID crisis, and my advice to principals and frontline school staff is, we're in the education business and we're in the support business. And we'll work with families, and each school will partake on this kind of endeavor as they need to. But we'll work with families to support them as they try and meet the demands that we're talking about. And what we have to rely on people's good civic responsibility to do their part and not attend to school when they're symptomatic, because we know that will cause issues for the greater population. So I have a lot of empathy and wonder and worry about that. But for now, from what I hear back from the schools, is they're working with some families, but generally people are really cooperating and doing their part for the greater good in terms of managing this.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for trustees? I guess that concludes the director's report, probably the most interesting director's report we've had in a long time. Thank you very much. Moving along to the next item on the agenda, and again, I hope I haven't missed anybody. I'll just pause for a second. Okay, good. Is the chairperson's update. We talked about this earlier. We all know that our chairperson, Trustee Morris, is quite emotional about his role as chairperson and what goes on in our school board. So we felt like it would be fair just for me to read his update. Hopefully everyone is okay with that. So Chair's update, February 23rd, 2021, adapting to pandemic realities. It now has been 11 months since the pandemic changed our world. As we have adapted to this new reality, we have learned to utilize the power of virtual learning to try to continue our students' educational journey. The learning curve has been steep as we interperse online with in-person learning. At present, we have returned to in-person learning. Most of our students have returned to school, with some having opted for online learning. What we know is that our future will not be the same as our past. The lessons of the past 11 months will inform us as we have reimagined and reorganized how we do our best to educate our students. I, Trustee Morris, Chairperson Morris, especially want to offer a special thank you to all our teachers and other education workers, support, and central staff for everything they do for our students and their families. Second part is the strategic plan renewal. Last fall, we began the strategic plan renewal process as we worked on our vision, mission, values, and strategic priorities. We now are well along in the second phase of this process as we consult with a wide variety of stakeholders. To date, we have sought input and advice from a variety of groups. We just finished virtual consultations with parents, guardians, and interested community members at 3 sessions with our family of schools. We also have received valuable advice from the Student Senate, the Parent Involvement Committee, and the Special Education Advisory Committee. Soon we will take what we have learned and developed operational goals, leading to a proposed, renewed strategic plan for consideration by the Board of Trustees. That is Chairperson Morris's report to the board. The next item on the agenda is the Student Trustees report for February 23rd. Jaslyn, I'm thinking you are the one who is giving that report.
Yeah, Hudson's gonna start us off.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just start with the first section, which is different student-centered initiatives that we're working on. So we recently joined a call with Lisa Lavivier to discuss the development of an app that's being made for the students of RCDSB on the topic of mental health. So we just gave our opinions and brought some student voice to the project, and then we reviewed the overall project and gave our input there as well. We have also begun to organize a menstrual equity project, and we'll be working with Amy Johnson as well as some others who are helping us collect some initial data so that we can move forward with that. And then I'll pass it over to Jaslyn to conclude.
Thank you, Hudson. So an update on the Opsba ACO Executive Council. So we organized another virtual conference to replace our Board Council Conference 2021. So this consisted of guest speakers, breakout sessions, and planning for future projects. It was also complete with an interactive website to navigate between sessions and opportunities to reach out to student trustees. And although it's not a part of the written report, I'll just give a quick oral report on how that went this weekend, since the report was written before that. It went really great. It's a long weekend, you know, lots of calls and everything. But honestly, our PD does a great way of making it very interactive and engaging, and so that went really well. We have also released our form for the Volume of Our Voices project and are already beginning to sort through responses to gather various important stories that students are submitting. The first release will be about the effects of COVID-19 on education. Thank you.
Thank you for the student trustee report. Does anybody have any questions for Hudson or Jaslyn from their report? Seeing and hearing nobody, thank you again for your student trustee report. The next item on the agenda is the OPSBA update. As everyone knows, we are quite fortunate to have 3 working members of the OPSBA in our school board. I'm not sure which trustee. I think I have Trustee Shields. Are you going to lead off the report, and then Trustee Humphreys and Trustee Adam may add following? I hope I have that correct.
Yeah, I can start it off if you'd like. There's about 3 different issues that the executive are working on. First one is Opsba is conducting an equity, inclusivity, and diversity audit of our organization. So executive met, there's a couple of consulting firms that submitted proposals, and we have chosen one, but I can't tell you who it is because it has to go to board of directors on Saturday. So you'll get information on that later. Second one, executive had an advocacy day. Last year we went to Queen's Park in person. This year we had to do it virtually. So we had an hour of the ministry's time. We met with PC MPPs and the minister. And the various members of the executive had different topics. The one I've been complaining about the most was the one I got to speak about, and that was technology and broadband access, or lack thereof. Anyway, the board of directors will be briefed on this, and the notes and all the information that we presented to the government will be forthcoming after Saturday's meeting. But we want to brief the board of directors first before we make this public. So it was a very successful day. You know, the minister stayed with us and answered questions, and some of the MPPs asked us questions, and we made a lot of recommendations. Anyway, you can look forward to getting that information later on. And then I think I'll leave the regional meeting for Trustee Humphreys.
Thanks, Trustee Shields. I'll report on a few things on the regional meeting, which was held last Saturday. But before I do that, I just wanted to mention as well that Opsba had put together a program on human rights and equity training for school board leaders, and I believe Trustee Boland and I were able to join both of those sessions, and they were both, I thought they were very, very well done, and I have shared notes and handouts with the Board of Trustees as well, but it was certainly an interesting a couple of sessions. The regional meeting on Saturday, as usual, we had some good discussion, good sharing of information among the Eastern Regional Boards. A couple of the highlights, and I will, again, once we get the minutes, I'll share them out with you. There is a new school that opened in Kingston, so that was very exciting for Limestone Board, of course. There is also another board who's developing a new policy on human rights. There's quite a bit of movement on Indigenous programming across the region as well. And Hastings and Prince Edward actually have rebranded and have a new logo. So those are just a couple of the quick highlights that came to mind that I thought you might be interested in. Two of the concerns that were brought forward and discussed and certainly supported by many of the boards was the concern around the GSNs being sent to the boards in an appropriate timeline, and it was good to hear Superintendent Barnes speak to that, but certainly Opsba is really pushing to make sure those GSNs are out before the end of March, at least ideally. And then the other piece is that Opsba is in the process of gathering information rather from all boards about lessons learned and thoughts about education in the future. So I know that we will be trying to pick people's brains on these kinds of things, and Opsba then will be putting together some messaging for the minister and the ministry with regards to this. I think many people are thinking that education will not necessarily go back to being the same old, that there will be some good things that we've learned from the pandemic that we will continue with, as well as continuing with some of our standard approaches too. So it'll be interesting to have that conversation. So that's what's a couple of the highlights around that. We do have an upcoming board of directors meeting, as Trustee Shields said, this coming Saturday as well. So we'll have more information to share from there. Trustee Adam, did you have anything you wanted to add? I know you're on a couple of committees that you might want to speak to.
Yes, thank you. I have had 2 meetings for Opsba groups during the time since our last meeting. So the first one was on the 10th of February, and that was a policy development work team meeting. And we had there a presentation by the TDSB Integrity Commissioner on the whole issue of codes of conduct and trustees who misbehave according to the codes of conduct or have complaints brought against them for their behaviors, and the usefulness of an integrity commissioner there. If you read the TJ Gertz's digest that he sends us every weekday, you will be aware of some of these issues across the province. And really, some boards have got some very, very serious problems with trustees behaving in ways that the public doesn't approve of, or other board members don't approve of, and even sometimes some sort of police involvement and all sorts of things. So that was a very interesting one. And it's not only the large boards that have these problems. And so the Integrity Commissioner for the TDSB, obviously that's a very large board, they have their own, explained what she does, but she also suggested that small boards, they could consider combining with a municipal council in the area, municipal or county level council, for having a shared integrity commissioner, and that also takes the idea of what's an appropriate code of conduct beyond what school boards think it is. And she also said we could also have a joint integrity commissioner with a regional, for example, Eastern Region might employ one jointly. Now, to my knowledge, the Renfrew County School Board has not had these problems for a very long time. And I think we're very fortunate when I read what's going on elsewhere. So that was very interesting. If anybody is interested in that, you could ask me some more. The other thing that was, we had some educational funding updates. I think you've heard all of that. But in particular, a lot of concern was expressed in this committee, in this work team, about the recent announcement of $60 million to TVO for curriculum development and remote learning development. And although Opsba's submission developed by the work teams on our position that we feel that TVO should be used as a curriculum support and resource development organization, and that we should be allowed to keep our own board consortia for the delivery of online learning. We think that funding does not indicate that that's where the government is thinking. And in addition, that very detailed and very well supported submission to the ministry was never even acknowledged that they had received it, let alone responded to the points that were brought up. So there's considerable dissatisfaction about that. The other committee I'm sitting on is for Project Compass, which is a direction reorganization or rethinking for what Opsba does. What do we want? What do trustees want Opsba to do? We pay quite a lot of money from our budget to Opsba to have this organization for all the boards of the province. But the same guidelines have been in place for quite a long time. So it was decided to set up this Project Compass. And it's got a steering committee and it's got 4 subcommittees, and I'm on the priority setting process subcommittee, and how we decide who sits on the various committees and how we decide on what are going to be the priorities of Opsba going forward and things like that. This is a very long drawn out affair, and you can expect to see somewhere along the way a survey sent out to all trustees to ask certain questions in this area. And I hope that all of us will obviously participate in that. And eventually something will be coming through to the Opsba Board of Directors to consider as a proposals for adapting or adjusting what we already do. That's it. Thank you. Sorry, that was rather long, but there are two interesting committees going on there. I'm done.
Thank you, Trustee Adam. Any questions for either any of our three OPSBA representatives? Seeing and oh, Trustee Gannett.
Just a comment. I think that we're very, very fortunate to have three representatives on Opsba. And I know that it was really enlightening and just great for me being a new trustee with my first year, getting an opportunity to go to Toronto and meet some of the caliber of the people that sit on these committees. So just to plug in, and thanks for the three that are going above and beyond. Like I heard Susan say, you know, we're meeting on Saturday. I mean, it's just great to hear that we have such commitment from our group. Thank you very much.
Great comment, Trustee Gannett. I'm sure echoed by all of their colleagues for sure. Okay, moving along. The next item on the agenda. I'm not aware of any correspondence. We have not had a lot of correspondence this year. No correspondence. Typically at this time, I ask if anyone has any other business that they would like to bring to the board table. Hearing and seeing none. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, just a quick reminder that tomorrow, Wednesday, February 24th, is Pink Shirt Awareness Day. I'm sure we're aware that it is to raise awareness for bullying activities, those types of things, and sort of to promote the aspect of being kind on a regular basis. So please, if you have a pink t-shirt or something close to it, I have one reasonably close. Actually, I do have a pink shirt. I got one last year, my golf shirt. It's pink, so I'm going to wear it tomorrow. Let's wear something pink tomorrow in respect and to support raising awareness for bullying, anti-bullying. With that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn our board meeting for Trustees.
I move we adjourn. I have no pink shirt, and I will move we adjourn.
Trustee Shields' motion to adjourn. Trustee Adams, seconder. All in favor? Thank you all for a great meeting, and hopefully our chairperson, Trustee Morris, will be back soon. And have a great evening, everybody. Thanks.
Have a good night.